Hello and welcome to one and all. So in today's class, we'll check the one of the most important topics. What are the characteristics of developing countries with reference to India? And while we are doing that, we will also compare what are all the characteristics of the developed countries. Okay, now on what basis the countries are classified as these are all the countries as developed and these are the countries which are underdeveloped or low income countries. See, the World Bank, they have classified the countries of the world as the low income, low middle income, upper middle income, and high income countries. So this classification on the basis of the GNI per capita of each and every country. And every year on 1st of July, the World Bank releases its report, the classification of the country. So what based on the GNA per capita of the previous year, then the countries of the world are classified. Okay. So the World Bank's classification, as I mentioned, updated by World Bank every year on 1st July. And it is, as I mentioned, it is based on the per capita income of the countries of the previous year. Okay. So this is as per the 2014 data. So it is classified by World Bank. So this 2014 is given in the textbook. That's why I'm mentioning here. So the low income countries or low income economy. So this low income economy is those countries whose per capita GNI per capita is less than 1035 US dollars or less. And here the same thing, the current data, this is whatever I'm writing in the blue pen is, it is the current data. So it is updated. The recent data is $1,085 USD. This is for 2022. Okay. And the next after low income, then coming to the low middle income economy. So this World Bank's classification, you are expected to memorize these data. And for that matter, most of the statistical data in this answer, you are supposed to memorize. So this is USD. Whatever I'm writing in black is the data pertaining to 2014. Whatever I'm writing in blue is pertaining to the data 2000, latest one, 2022. So USD, so 1036 to 4085. Okay. I'm going the latest one, 1086 to 4255. And then next, upper middle income economy. Third classification is upper middle income economy. So that is USD 4086 to 12,650. So this one 4256, because already 45 over, isn't it? Between 4,256 to 13,205. And finally, moving on to the fourth category, high income economy. So they are those countries which are having US dollars of more than 12,616 and more. This one. And the current, as per the recent estimate, this is more than 13,205. So any country whose per capita income is more than 13,000, average per capita income, more than 13,205, they are termed as the high income economies. So this is how the countries of the world are classified by the World Bank. And as I mentioned, every 1st July, now itself you can see the difference. The data are, so here it was 2035, now it has changed to 2085. Upper income, high income economy, it was 12,616, now it is 13,205. So every year, because of this reason, the data cannot remain stable, isn't it? So according to the circumstances, situations, inflationary trends, and everything, the World Bank keeps on releasing the data every 1st of July. So this is the classification of the low income, middle income, and high income countries. Now, based on this, the first classification is done with the based on per capita income. But apart from per capita income, there are certain features which are peculiar only to the underdeveloped countries compared to the developed countries. So on all those bases, certain countries are regarded as the underdeveloped countries and certain countries are regarded as the developed countries. So let us check out what are all the features, those features which are categorized, which are differentiating between the developed countries and the developing countries. Okay. Now, so we will, while we are proceeding, we will compare the features of the developing countries, including India, and also let us compare with the developed countries. Okay. Now, so on this side, I'll write the developing countries. Before that, what is a developing country? So developing countries is those countries whose per capita, according to UN publications, those countries whose per capita real income is less than a quarter of the real per capita income of the United States, USA. So they are termed as the categorized as the underdeveloped countries or the developing countries. Actually, these countries are called as the underdeveloped countries, but most of these countries, they don't like themselves to be addressed as underdeveloped countries because they are in the process of development. That's why the United Nations changed the term from underdeveloped countries to developing countries. Okay, so since they are in the process of development, if it is undeveloped countries, mean there is no development at all, that is undeveloped. So since these countries are coming under the category of underdeveloped countries, they are under the process of development, so they are termed as the developing countries. Okay, so now let us check what are all the features that is differentiating these countries from that of the developed countries. So characteristics. So developing countries and India. This side, I'll mention the so that it will be easy for you to compare developed countries. So the first and foremost feature is just now we have seen low per capita income. So this is one of the main features of all the developing or the underdeveloped countries. So the average per capita income is low, and you know what are all the consequences these countries face because of the low per capita income. And the low per capita income directly reflects in poverty. And these countries, the poverty, there is something called as absolute poverty. So absolute poverty is absolutely they are poor and they are not able to purchase they are not even able to meet the minimum standards of living. That is the meaning of absolute poverty. But these countries, the developed countries, they come under the category of something called as the relative poverty. So relative poverty is one person might be able to meet its minimum requirements, but compared to the other person, he is relatively poor. So it is not that they are absolutely poor, they are relatively poor. Okay. So that is the kind of poverty between the developed countries and the underdeveloped or the developing countries. And you know, the one of the main reasons of this absolute poverty in all the underdeveloped countries is because of the very low per capita income these countries are fetching. Okay, now as for, let us take the data. So India, the per capita income of India is $7,680. This is in 2018. So compared to, you have China, I mean, it was also once upon a time termed as the underdeveloped countries, but the progress of China had been very fast. Now it is almost coming under the category of the developed countries. Okay, so but still, its per capita income is $18,170. Okay, and the same thing, if you take the developed countries, the per capita income is of USA $63,690. You can see that the per capita income of US is more than 8 times of that of the per capita income of India. If you remember the definition, how to identify under the less than the quarter of the per capita income of USA. So you can see that it's more than 8 times of that of India. And if you take UK, the per capita income of UK is somewhere around $45,350. And if you take Switzerland, so it is 68,820. Okay, so now you can see the clearly see the what is the difference in the per capita income of these countries. So here you can low per capita income, whereas these countries are having high growth rate of, or high rate of per capita income. So that is the first thing that is differentiating between the developing countries and the developed countries. And as far as India's rank is concerned, India comes under 110 out of 133 countries based on the per capita income. The rank of India was 110 out of 133 countries. This was in 2018. And this is recent one, 145 out of 193 countries. This is in 2021. But this 2021, the per capita income of India has decreased to from 7,680, it has decreased to 7,220 thanks to COVID. So it has slightly decreased. Okay. Now this is the first feature that is differentiating the developed countries and the developing countries. Okay, please make sure that you remember these statistical data. At least if you're not remembering these data, like whatever I'm writing in Blueprint, this is the recent result, but the other ones you are expected to remember. Okay, then I mean, with the data only you can prove that what how poor these countries are in comparison with the developed countries. Then the second feature is the predominance of, as usual, I'm mentioning the characteristics of the developing countries on the left hand side and India. And on the right hand side, the data pertaining to developed countries. So the second feature what you have that significantly differs with that of the developed countries is the predominance of agriculture. Predominance of agriculture in the sense that majority of the national income, the major share of the national income will be contributed by the agricultural sector compared to the tertiary and the industrial sector. And also, most importantly, major percentage of the employment of the labor force, they will be in the agricultural sector compared to the other sector. That is the difference. Okay. So now, but recently, India has improved its share of tertiary sector compared, and simultaneously the share of primary sector has decreased. But the problem is the employment in the tertiary sector is not as much as it should be. The employment in the tertiary sector is still low, even though the contribution made by the tertiary sector to the total national income has increased. Okay. So mostly in all developing countries, agriculture will be dominating. So all developing countries, there is a predominance of primary sector or the agricultural sector. As I mentioned, both in the national income as well as in the contribution to the employment. So more than 70% of the population, more than 2/3 of the population in these countries, they live in the rural areas and mostly belonging to the agricultural sector. And some of the features of these agricultural sector in these countries is, as I mentioned, more than 70% of the population live in rural areas, depending on agriculture. And they produce only, they specialize only in the production of, only specialize in the production of, so rural areas, the production of raw materials and primary products, which is fetching very, I mean, the value is very less compared to the industrial products. So that's the problem here. And then what about the agriculture? Even though they are depending on agriculture, agriculture is not developed here. So you have the backward agriculture due to, you know, already we have seen that poor or backward techniques of cultivation, and also mostly dependent on rainfall, including India, which is said that in Indian agriculture is a gambling in monsoon. So the reason is due to the irrigation facilities are not that much developed. So due to lack of irrigation facilities. So these are all some of the features of, even though they are depending on agriculture, the production in agriculture in all these countries are very, very backward. Now, when you come to the data, how much percentage of the population they are depending in agriculture and what is the contribution to GDP? Let us check out. So these are all the features of all these underdeveloped countries who are depending on agricultural sector for their development. So as far as India is concerned, a share of India in GVA. GVA is gross value added. Okay. So that is a meaning. I mean, nowadays, the statistical department, the CSO, they are, earlier it used to be GDP or GNP. The meaning is the same, but the term, the method of calculation is slightly different. So the value keeps on added, isn't it? The commodity goes through from one stage to raw materials to intermediary stage, the value, some value is added. From intermediary stage to final product, again some value is added, isn't it? So the method of calculation is slightly different. So now the statistical department, in place of GDP or GNP, they are calculating based on GVA, that is the gross value added. Okay. So the gross value added is 16.5%. That is gross value added to national income. 16.5%. This is based on 2019-20. And the same thing, the tertiary sector, it comes to 55%. So nowadays, the contribution made by tertiary sector into the national income is increased in India, thanks to the development of IT sector in our country. But even though the share of national income in the tertiary sector has increased, its employment contribution is very less. So as far as primary sector employment contribution is concerned, the share of employment of primary sector or agricultural sector, even today, nearly 43% of the people are depending on agriculture. Okay, but the same thing if you take the tertiary sector, the employment is only 27%. You can understand that 43% of the population are depending on agriculture is agricultural sector employment, but still the contribution of agricultural sector is only 16% or 17%. But only 27% are depending on a tertiary sector, but still its contribution is equaling to 55%. From this itself, you can understand the productivity of the labor force employed in the tertiary sector compared to the primary sector. More number of people are employed in the primary sector, but still it is not able to contribute that much to the national income. But whereas very less percentage is employed in the tertiary sector, but still they are able to contribute more to the national. That is the nature of agricultural sector. The productivity cannot increase beyond a certain level. Okay. Now, when you take the developed countries, these countries, they give more importance to the secondary sector and the tertiary sector, or in other words, significance of industry and service sector. So when you see about the dominance of tertiary sector in these countries, most of the developed countries, 80% of their contribution, both to the national income as well as employment from the secondary and tertiary sectors. And only 1% to 2%, both employment as well as the contribution to national income, only 1% to 2% of the primary sector. So this is the exact contradiction in what is happening in the underdeveloped countries. Okay. So, I mean, these are all the data that prove what are all the problems of the underdeveloped countries. See, as long as you are depending on agricultural sector, the country's progress will not be rapid. So one day you have to, that's why in the first topic we have seen what should be the structural changes the country should initiate for economic development, isn't it? So the country should slowly switch over from the primary to secondary and tertiary sector. So that's why these countries, the developed countries, they are in the process of economic growth. They have initiated their structural changes. So already the tertiary sector dominates. First is primary sector, then moving on to secondary, then finally to tertiary. So these sectors, automatically the tertiary sector is dominating in this country, both in employment as well as in the national income. So, and simultaneously the share of agricultural sector keeps on decreasing. So that's why they initiated the structural changes. So the productivity in those countries keep on increasing. Okay. So that's why we keep saying why there should be a shift in the from the agriculture to tertiary, because of how much ever you're depending on agriculture, the productivity cannot increase beyond a certain level. The country cannot grow beyond a certain level. That's why it is necessary to shift from agriculture to the other sectors. Okay. Anyway, these are all the data that prove the difference. Okay. Then the third category is the feature is the something called as the capital deficiency. But whereas in the developed countries, it is high rate of growth of capital formation. So these countries, the underdeveloped countries, they are termed as the capital poor or low saving and low investing economies. Because we know that as it is, the per capita income of these countries are low. So when the per capita income of the countries are low, automatically the savings and investments are also going to be low. So on an average, all the developing countries, they will save only between 15% to 25% of national income. So only that much is allotted for capital formation. But whereas in the case of developed countries, they normally save 40% to 50%. That is the main difference. But recently, as far as India is concerned, the gross domestic savings of India has increased to 30%, and gross domestic investment has increased to 32%. Okay, compared to this is in USA and UK, it has decreased to 20%. So because these countries, after the recession in 2008, most of these countries, they were not able to bring about that much amount of capital formation. But only thing is, since they have all, it is not a major concern for these countries, because what is the advantage here? They already have well developed technology. So that's the advantage. They already initiated whatever is required to be done out of the capital formation. They have already done there. So the well-developed technology, well-developed entrepreneurial class. So the productivity keeps on increasing there. So it is only a temporary for these kind of countries, even though the capital formation reduces, because you must be knowing about the business cycles, that it goes up and down. So this is only a temporary low phase, but after some time they might be able to reach the peak period. But whereas in case of countries like developing countries like India and other countries, it is a major problem, because we don't have that much kind of technological progress, and we don't have that much of human resources are not there, isn't it? So unless the country continuously keeps on increasing the capital formation year after year, continuously keep on increasing the savings and investment, it is very difficult to speed up the process of economic development. Okay, then anyway, that is the major difference between the developed and developing countries. Then the next is the technological progress. The deficiency of capital directly leads to technological backwardness. So all the underdeveloped countries, they lack that modern technology. But whereas when you talk about the developed countries, they have the use of modern production techniques and skills. So these countries, they use only very outdated, poor and backward technology in almost all the sectors of the country. In almost all the sectors of the country. So in order to have the technological progress, one of the main things the country has to do is they have to incur expenditure on research and development. So other day we have seen research and development, more percentage of the country's national income is allotted for the expenditure on research and development, automatically the progress, the innovations will take place in the country. But expenditure, for example, if you take India, the expenditure on research and development is only 0.62% of GDP. When you take the same thing in the developed countries, as it is, these countries are having the highly skilled labor force with good amount of entrepreneurial facilities available in those countries. Apart from that, they keep on innovating, doing a lot of research, keep on incurring more amount of expenditure on research and development. Let us check out. See, USA, the expenditure on R&D is 2.80% of the GDP. Japan, it is somewhere around 3.20%. The other day we have seen Japan, Switzerland and all, they without, I mentioned to you, even without any adequate natural resources, they were all able to develop. This is the reason they were continuously making innovations. See, as it is, their national income is high, their per capita income is high, and on the top of it, if they are allotting more than 3% of their to the research and development, then you can imagine the progress. Okay. And for example, Switzerland 3.3%, the per capita income of Switzerland is $68,820 USD. So now you can understand, with this amount of national income, they are able to allot so much percentage on research and development, how much there would be a technological progress in all these countries. You can understand. Okay. Then the next direct outcome of this is the inadequate infrastructural facilities. So this we all have seen, that we know that all the infrastructural facilities like roads, power, irrigation, banking, communication, health and education, all these are very, very poor in this country, but all these are well developed or reasonably developed infrastructural facilities in all these countries. Okay. Now moving on to the most important factor, demographic features. So demographic features, all these the underdeveloped countries, one thing they have is the high growth rate of population. Second, size of population is also very high. Then low life expectancy. High growth rate of population as well as, and also high density of population. Low life expectancy, high infant mortality rate, etc. So all these are some of the features of the demographic features of the developing countries compared to the developed countries. So for all these, you have to prove with the data. Okay, what is the growth rate of population in the developing countries compared to the developed countries? What is the life expectancy in the developed countries compared to the developing countries, including India? Okay, so one day those data will give a proof that what is the difference between the developed countries and these countries. Okay, so this all these data which I will explain to you tomorrow. Okay, if you like this video, please share, subscribe. If you have any doubts, please mention in the comment box. Okay, so until my next video, take care. Bye bye.